All right, Cody McDonough.
Yeah.
Thanks for being guest one on the Recipe podcast.
Glad
Kind
to
of
be here.
revamped it because I have been doing it before, but we're going a little bit different direction here, which is like I've been wanting to do this with extreme sport or action sports athletes because like I kind of what I'm interested in is not what you do so much because I know what you do, but the why. Like why do you do it and getting kind of an inside like psychological look at it because like I don't think a lot of people do that. It's always like, remember when you did that crazy jump in 2017? Like, yeah, we all saw it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I want to get an inside view as to why you do it because like how many times have you heard somebody see somebody do a backflip on a dirt bike or base jump or do whatever and they say like what are they thinking or that's really they're stupid,
Right.
like which is kind of saying that they're stupid. Actually these people are probably a lot more calculated than you think they are
For sure.
by doing that, wouldn't you say so?
100%.
Yeah, so to the people that say, like, what are you thinking when you're doing something like that? What do you say to them? Or
Yeah.
what would you say to them?
Yeah, when it comes to that, basically, like the whole action sports world, a lot of people think it's more of like a just a send it mentality and, hope for the best. I have even a few friends that like have gotten into action sports and you know, everyone tries to send it. I think a lot of it's pushed by social media these days and trying to get that post or that video or that picture. And a lot of people have big crashes and stuff like that. And I've had a few friends personally that like, ask kind of that question of like, when you're going to say hit that jump or do that trick, like, do you know you're going to land it or like, what's your thought? And, every time I go to do something, I'm doing it to land it. It's like 100% in my head. I've already envisioned it and see myself riding out of that jump, landing in the perfect spot, um, and doing everything perfect with finesse, and a lot of people I've heard, like they hit stuff or hit a jump or do a trick and they're fine with crashing and think about the crashing or the failing side of it more than the actual uh, riding out of it or the success of it and perfecting it. They're more focused on the wrong side of it, and so um, it's definitely a calculated thing. And the people that are professionals in the action sport industry, I feel like they're all very calculated, very smart when it comes to it, and they know they're gonna land it or whatever, and it takes kind of a fluke thing for something not to happen first or for something to happen. So
Yeah, I guess I would say, you brought up knowing going into a stunt, if you will, knowing that it's going to work or going into it scared. Like if you think you're going to fail, you probably will. And
yeah,
my experience with that is I remember the first time I did a solo skydive.
right,
I remember my instructor telling me in the plane, he was laughing. He wasn't being a dick about it. He was laughing, but he's like, why don't you just calm down and then you can get the fuck out of my plane here in a little bit.
right,
And it was the best, like most perfectly executed jump that I've done
right,
was my first one. And then every jump that I've done solo since then, where I have like been really scared and kind of had like in my head a picture of failing,
hmm,
is when I fucked up.
oh, for sure, yep.
So it's hard to tell yourself, it's hard to get into the right mindset every time
Yep.
of like, but and truly be in the mindset, not just telling yourself that, but actually being in the mindset.
Yep.
How do you, is there a way that you can kind of, is there something that you do that gets yourself in the right mindset before you do any sort of stuff?
There's like I can have like my few routine things, whether it be, every day is different depending on like the event or where I'm at, whether it's, dirt biking, snowmobiling, whatever it is, like for example, like my thing now, it sounds ridiculous, but uh when I put my mouthpiece in, like my helmet's on, I put my mouthpiece in and goggles go on, like right there, it's like I click into a whole different me, you know, it's like, um, that's when my brain knows it's go time, and, like, mind and body connect more than any other time in my life, really, you know, it's like, helmet on is one thing, but, you know, once that mouthpiece goes in, like, I know I mean business and, like, ready to do what I'm going to do, you know? Um, but, you know, back to, like, how the brain works, you know, your brain I listen to a lot of, like, you know, motivational speakers. I have a lot of mentors that aren't, like, full-time mentors, but, you know, they reach out and helped with my mindset a lot, especially this last year, but even in the past. But I've always been told, like, your brain doesn't know, um you know, the difference between a conscious, actual, like, doing something and then just a conscious thought as well. So it's like, you know, when you think of, crashing or think of winning or thinking of perfecting something, um, it's your body. It's the same thing as doing it. You know, your body doesn't know the difference of that. So it's like
Right.
the more you, you know, think about things and envision it, and kind of like the law of attraction. You know, like what you um, say and see in your head is, you know, what comes usually. And you know, I going back to like my first Monster Jam show, like I'll never forget. Um, it was a 5 show weekend, and we got to it was the last show, a Sunday. You know, all of us are pretty beat and tired, and we're like all kind of going to it with like the mindset of like, oh, let's just get through this, you know, and not an ideal setup and stuff. And then I remember the last jump turning it into the runway. I'm like, all right, just don't mess up this jump. This is first time riding a show for Monster Jam. Like, it's been a great weekend. And I made a stupid mistake of missing my seat grab. Next thing you know, I landed on my head, and last jump of the last show of the weekend. And it was 100%, I believe, just because I thought about it. You know, the thought of don't mess up, and you put that extra pressure on yourself of failing. And that's how, like, important, like, having a mindset and a good conscience when you're doing those type of things, you know?
Sure. So I was on the airplane on the way up here, and I ended up striking up conversation with the guy I was sitting next to. He's a pretty nice guy. And I actually asked him, because I knew we were going to do this podcast, I asked him, what would you ask these extreme sports athletes? And basically, the gist of what he wanted to ask was, how do you justify the risk versus the reward?
That's a pretty loaded question, I'd say. You know, you definitely have to keep, the risk side of it in back of your mind, because like, what you're doing in the day, it is dangerous, especially with me, you know, like, whether it be dirt biking, you know, like, obviously, the jumping, the freestyling is, you know, you're doing jumping 75 feet, doing tricks, doing backflips, like, pretty high risk. You know, nowadays it's a little bit less with the airbags. However, you know, like we said, a guy last weekend or 2 weekends ago crashed and break his collarbone, and luckily it wasn't worse, you know, and that's even jumping to an airbag. So like the airbag doesn't prevent injury. You know, I broke my femur last year, jump into an airbag. Um, had a buddy break a femur at my house this year, jump into an airbag. So like the risk is still super high. But then go outside that, you know, snowmobiling, you know, it's you have avalanches, and you're very deep out in the backcountry. So like if you do get hurt out there, now you don't have help like you do, say, if you get hurt at, say, a freestyle event where they have EMTs on site, or at a racetrack we have EMTs on site. So you know, everything kind of has big risk involved with it, but at the end of the day, you have to, in my head at least, how I kind of justify it is, or how I look at it at least, is I feel like I put myself in more risk every day getting in my car and driving on a public highway. You know, you have a lot more things outside of your control doing that. Whether it just be other drivers, you know, people have health conditions, people might be drinking, people might be on drugs. You have just no idea. You know, you could could be windy outside, you could have a tree fall down across and take you out. You know, you just never know. Um, you know, there's so many things outside your control. You know, when I'm on my dirt bike, to a lot of people, it looks like it's high risk. Um, but I actually feel like it's one of the safer things I do, to be honest, my day-to-day life, you know, because a lot of people don't realize, the type of risk they put themselves out to just in their day-to-day life, walking down the side of the street, driving a car, um, shoot, there's a lot of things that you just have a lot higher risk, I think, than what we do. But to the normal person, they might not see that.
Yeah, and they don't, because I've said that to people a lot of the times, like especially when I got into skydiving, or when people just ask me about like when I film for people like you, is going back to like, oh, that's stupid, it's so dangerous, they could get killed. You could get killed. Well, and when I do say that, when I say, I could also get fucking T-bone leaving here
Hmm.
later and also die. They kind of roll your eyes when you say that, but the fact of the matter is it is true. But you guess what? I'm not gonna fucking enjoy the car ride or the T-bone.
Yep.
I enjoy the skydive.
Yep. For sure.
You enjoy the jump on the dirt bike or the snowmobile, you
Yep.
know? So, and you can even say that and people roll their eyes, you know what I mean?
Oh,
So
for
it's just
sure.
kind of,
Yep.
but, and we wouldn't really be talking extreme sports though if we didn't talk about the fear, the
Yep.
fear associated with everything that goes into what you do. Um, how do you process, or how do you deal with the fear associated with doing these?
Yeah, fear's been a battle, my whole life, from since a little kid, as far as, riding dirt bikes, and um kind of to take a step back to the start of like where, like, because like fear, like you gotta build a relationship with fear because there's no way to escape it. Um you're gonna be scared no matter what of things, and that's always gonna be there. So you gotta be best friends with fear, like um and I learned that kind of, I feel like, at a young age with riding dirt bikes. At the local dirt bike track. I was shoot probably 8 years, 6, 7, 8 years old on a 65, and just at the age where you start actually jumping jumps and stuff. And once you start figuring out jumping jumps, and then starting with tabletop stuff like that, where you can work your way into it, then it's like your next step is doubles, triples, stuff like that. And I'll never forget the first time trying to muster up the strength to push through the fear to like hit this double double at the track. And um, sometimes it takes a push of a peer or a family member, someone you trust, to get you through that first hurdle of fear. And then you kind of start building, like, okay, some confidence in yourself with whatever it is. And then you have all these things in life that add up, that fear comes and goes. And each time is you kind of build that confidence and relationship with fear. But if you don't build that, your fears will just get worse, and you don't have a way to push through it. But one thing I've always told myself is, you know, everything you want is always on the other side of fear. And so, like, in back of my head, I'm like, all right, like, yeah, I might be scared, but like what I want is more important than being scared, and pushing through it. So a lot of times, like, I just kind of have to play that through my head and convince myself. Um, and like most of the time when it's like fear, it's something, there's just like added variables to something. Usually, it's not like I don't have confidence in myself to do something, but there's like a little bit of the unknown or the what if or whatever. And the what if mentality can, I think, be the hugest driving factor in fear and like killing dreams for people. Like you know, what are people gonna think, or what if I get hurt, or what if, like the whole what if mentality, because a lot of people see the what if mentality as a negative and bad thing. Um, just over the last couple of years, I've been able to, because I've struggled with that my whole life, like the, oh, the what if you mess up, what if, this, that. And, I started training my brain and my mindset to, what if it works? What if, what's that feeling going to be if you land that backflip? What if what opportunity is going to come about if you do that? And so I started, not tricking my mind, but training my mind into, um, whenever fear enters my brain, instead of like, oh, what if I mess up and I get hurt? Because not that that can't happen, but I always think of the positive things. What's it going to feel like? What opportunities is going to open up? With the freestyle stuff, the backflip, for example, it's like, what's that feeling gonna be like when you land and ride out of it? What's that feeling gonna be like when you're upside down in middle of a sold out crowd and a crowd's cheering? Like, I think of all those things and those feelings of, good and what that's gonna feel like, what what paycheck comes along with that, what all the things, and that's I'm very thankful I was able to train myself, my mindset to do that. Um, but yeah, and I feel like that's I see it with a lot of friends and stuff that struggle with that. They get stuck in the negative side of the what if mentality.
I am so glad that you said the what if it works out kind of deal, because I kind of have the same thing that I do, and even on a very low level, like if I have a thought of something that I think would be cool, like for example, if I'm on a shoot and
Mhm.
even if I'm tired at the end of the shoot, but there's a shot that I really want to get
Yep.
and I don't want to do it because I'm tired or because maybe they don't want to do it, the client doesn't want to do it or whatever. I always think like, but what if you did? And I
Right.
apply that to everything that I do. It's like think of what your life would look like 10 minutes from now or 10 years from now if you did do that one thing.
Right.
And if I get to the point where I ask myself that question in my head, that's when it's time to execute, dude.
Yep.
Like just make it happen and you will always always be happy that you did.
Yep.
Unless something really crazy happens, you're
Right.
always going to be happy that you did.
Yeah.
So that's the best question to ask yourself when, if you're being maybe crippled by fear or the risk of anything in life, not extreme sports, definitely extreme sports, but not just extreme sports. Anything.
Yeah. And to kind of continue on that too, there's like a whole nother side of that, like, all right, because like a lot of people have a hard time like, oh, go if you go down the negative route from that, it's like, okay, you can be as positive as you want and things are still gonna happen. You're still gonna have failures no matter what. And I've had a lot of broken bones, lots of injuries, a lot of failures, more failures than success and things working out, to be honest. But um, there's not one of those times where like I regret doing any of it. Like those every time something hasn't worked out, I still push through the fear in that moment. And, it might not work out in the moment. It sucks. You're hurt. You're in the hospital. You might be sitting on the couch for a few months or whatever. Um, but at the end of the day, every single one of those like failures has been a lesson, and you always learn more from the failures than the wins. Um, and so you gotta take those and build from those. And when you have something bad happen, like I've always like hasn't really phased me because it's like, when you have something bad happen, things can only get better, So it's like, and they always typically do, things could be bad for a while, but at some point things will get better. And, if you take everything and learn from it, then you're going to be better next time you go back, whether it's riding dirt bikes, snowmobiling, life, everything, So, um, nobody's perfect and everyone's going to fail. And the more, open you can be with failure and, humiliation, like you have to be willing to humiliate yourself in a way, like you can't be scared of what others think and um, send it, whether it's riding a bike or anything. So
Yeah. Yeah, the fear of failure is something that like really really cripples people and I don't personally necessarily know why because I'm telling you that like a lot of the reason why I am as good at what I do as I am is because of when I've really fucked up and have been like,
mhm.
well, I'm not doing that again.
Right.
And then have just built from there.
Yep.
What is the most scared you've ever been before a stunt? Whether that's dirt bike, snowmobile, whatever.
Does that have to be a question, or does that have to go with just the action sports? Could that be outside of that? Or would you
It could
say
be anything in life.
most scared I've ever been? I'm absolutely terrified of heights, and I went bungee jumping in Whistler, and that was the most terrifying thing I've ever done because I am absolutely scared of heights, which sounds
But
ridiculous, but
let me ask you this though, because I have noticed that when it comes to I haven't bungee jumped, but I've done dozens of skydives. It does seem like the people that are the most afraid of heights are the people that get the most out of it. They get the most reward out of the risk because there's more fear involved in doing it.
yep.
So when you are successful, I think for those people, it's just amplified to a whole nother level. Like the adrenaline, the reward in general.
Yep.
Not to say that because I'm not really afraid of heights. It's not to say that I don't get anything out of it.
Right.
Wouldn't have done it dozens of times by myself had I
Right.
not gotten anything out of it. But it's definitely like I've noticed when I'm at drop zones, when the people that are really sweating bullets,
Yep.
they hit the ground and they are jacked up, dude.
Yep.
Eyes dilated,
Yep.
just ready to go.
Yeah, and that's a perfect example, like, dude, the first time I bungee jumped, I was terrified. It took me there's, like, 20 other people sitting there waiting to do it, and it took me I mean, it felt like 10 minutes. It probably was only a minute or 2 to walk out on that, like, pedestal thing and just, "Alright, go," and it's like and I stood there for probably, like, 30 seconds, like, "Alright, jump," and it's like, "Alright, screw it, here I go, jump," and, I mean, dude, I had, like, the biggest adrenaline dopamine rush I've guess like, ever had, like, 'cause it's like, that's literally, like, my biggest fear is heights and just jumping off this bridge over a river and, like, it literally felt like you're gonna hit the river, like,
Mhm.
um, it wasn't even the jumping too was like, alright, you jump, and then it's like, alright, now you're hanging down here below this bridge, and they send a winch cable down to hook up to you, and now you're getting winched up super slow back up to the bridge, and it's like, "Dang, this is almost just as scary as jumping." Like,
Yeah.
but, after doing it, I was like, "I'm doing this every time I come back to Whistler," like, it was awesome, and, not that it got rid of my fear of heights, I'm still terrified of heights, but, like, I that feeling I got, in that moment was, something you can't just get in your day-to-day life. And that's a perfect example of, like, when you push through a fear, like, the feelings and emotions that are on the other side of that, and, it's same thing with especially the first time you do something, I'll never forget the first backflip I did on my dirt bike. I never thought I'd ever backflip a dirt bike in my life, and, that first one you ride out of, it's like, "Oh my gosh, I just did that." And then, you know, you still have I mean, backflips are still scary to me, but, um, they're not like it'll never be like the first one I did, like, that first one was absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
I was like, at the end of the day, it's like you could die doing this. And, but then when you do it, it's like, "Holy crap, I just did that," and the feeling you get and the rush, and it's like it's hard to replace that, and I think that's why, everything evolves so much in life, and you're always chasing that progression and that next you're trying to chase that feeling you had first, like, you want that same feeling of like, "Oh, what that first backflip felt like," and that's why, tricks progress, and everything progresses, and, it's like you're chasing that first time feeling again.
Yeah. How is managing fear associated with extreme sports? Has it helped you manage it in other aspects of life?
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's helped me a bunch, from, running a business, being a dad, everything has, I wouldn't say, like when I look at fear, I correlate fear kind of with stress. And, outside of riding, I wouldn't say I have, many fears, other than just like, yeah, I wouldn't say there's really many fears other than like being scared of heights and stuff like that. But then again, it's like you have the fear of, running a business, fear of your business failing, fear of, with kids, being a dad, being a bad parent, like those are kind of like my fears outside of riding. And at the end of the day, that's like stress, and stress goes along with fear. They kind of run hand in hand. And, you know, riding is kind of like my escape from, my normal day to day life. So like, I feel like I get rid of my stress doing that, but then it also, um, everything, the skills I build riding a dirt bike, just with the mentality and mindset behind it, I think that definitely correlates into day-to-day life, being running a business and being a dad and a good parent and, just being a good human too. Because I mean, it's, it's a lot harder to, in situations to, um, in today's day and world, be the nice guy and be the bigger person a lot of times and stuff, and, I feel like, riding bikes and the mentality that's helped me build, it's given me the ability to be just a good person and, be a good dad, be a good, business owner, and always, put my best foot forward.
Let me reverse that on you. How has having kids changed the way you perform in extreme sports?
That's tough. Everyone always told me before I had kids, like I did like 30 week or not 30 weekend, probably 25 weekends straight of riding freestyle. Um, while I was pregnant with my first kid, while we were pregnant with our first kid. And I had a couple older guys, one of them being Adam Jones, which was, one of my idols growing up, which that was kind of crazy in its own thing to like, wow, my first year riding freestyle, I'm riding with Adam Jones. Like, what the heck? Like, this is pretty freaking rad. And then it's also with Robert Haslam, who's a local legend here. Always look up to him as well, X Games medalist. He had, 3 kids at the time. He's a great dad. I looked up to him in, many ways outside of riding bikes. And they always told me like, "Oh, once you have kids, things are gonna change." I'm like, "Oh, no, nothing's gonna change." I was dumb for thinking that because everything changed. The second that kid comes out, the emotions and, the attachment and just everything completely changes. There's nothing you love more than that, and, now you're responsible for another human, and, so you have the stress of like, okay, now bring that, that amplified fear again. It completely changed. At that time in my life, I wasn't fearless, or didn't think I was like invincible, but to a point I kind of did feel invincible. I was like, I didn't have as responsible for myself, and that was it. Now you bring someone else into the world and you're responsible for them, and they count on you being there. They count on you putting a roof over their head and putting food on the table and stuff like that. Um, it makes you really think about what you're doing and the risk you are taking. And for the first year or two, I definitely struggled with that. Especially too, I ended up 2 years ago having another kid, and then also a separation from my kid's mother, and so that also amplified the fear and stress of that all over again. Because like I kind of after the first kid, it was a year of like building that mindset back up. Because what's tough about with what we do, like I said, back to that first Monster Jam show, all it took was that one simple thought, negative thought for things to go wrong of like, hey, let's just get through this, don't mess up. And you mess up. And so like having kids again, you can't think that way when you're doing events and doing the action sport extreme stuff. And so like training your mind to get back to that is like super crucial and not letting that get in the way. But you also have to be real with yourself and know the risk you're taking because you can't go out there and get hurt and have your kids, be the ones that take the hit for it, at the end of the day. So that was tough. And, I had to go through it basically twice. I built it back up, that relationship with fear and the mindset, and then basically started all over again. Cause then, now you're fighting for custody for your kids. And, last thing you can afford to do is get hurt. And now you're on your own trying to take care of kids and the time you do have them. And, um, actually did get hurt, broke my femur 2 months into our separation. And it was tough freaking taking care of your kids, 2 kids, especially a 6-month-old and a 2-year-old at the time. And, man, that was wild, wild times. And, but I'm very thankful for it because it forced me to take a step back and hunker down and be a good dad and, put my kids first, but then also just restart and build that mindset back up. And, I can finally say, probably like, August, September, which is not too long ago, we're talking 4 or 5 months ago. Um, I finally feel like my mindset's back to 100% again, which is an awesome feeling.
Sure. What are some lessons you would like your kids to learn from watching their dad perform as an extreme sports athlete?
The biggest thing, like, is I just want to show my kids that, no matter what, like, don't give up on your dreams because, and don't let fear or anyone, you know, push you to give up on your dreams. Like it's, it's super easy depending on the day and the mindset you're in to have, words from someone that might not even matter affect you, just because of what's going on that day or whatever. So I just want to show them like, hey, like, because there's many times like I almost freaking hung it up and, even from racing, stop racing it, ride bikes for 4 or 5 years, then jump into freestyle and then, have kids and have kind of things take a step back for a year or 2, and, um, snowmobiling too, you kinda have, it's all a roller coaster, but, like, at the end of the day, because like, I have a good business, I make good money, with my business, with selling real estate and stuff like that, and so, like, I even have my family, question sometimes, like, "Why are you doing this? You make good money," like, "There's no reason to do it. The risk ain't worth it," but, like, for me, it's not about the risk, not about the money involved with dirt bikes or snowmobiling. It's like, that's my true passion, and that's, like, my dream, and, um, my dream evolves too daily, I feel like it's not like, uh, I'm still chasing, like, that initial dream from when I was a kid, my dream was to I mean, originally, it was just to ride dirt bikes forever, like, that's all I wanted to do, and, basically, that's what I'm doing, is chasing my dreams evolved into, with goals and stuff like that, but right now, I am living the dream of riding my dirt bike and doing it at a level I never thought I would, and, I want my kids to be able to look at that one day and be like, "Hey, like, if my dad can do it, I can do it," type thing, and I know for sure I'll give, my kids the tools and everything to do whatever they wanna do and chase, so it's like, um, I want them to, 100% think whatever their dream is, they can chase it and they can obtain it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's I think it's super important to have a father figure or just parent figure in their life that or any kid's life that sets an example of like you can chase your dreams and you can make shit happen
Yeah.
because you really can. And parents that are like just overprotective and don't want their kids to try new things or
Yep.
take risks, it's just like you're just creating that over and over again. You know what I mean? It's like if you can push your kids and set an example and not just tell them,
Right.
that's I think that's huge, especially, having a parent that sets an example of chasing your dreams and taking risks.
Yep.
That's huge.
Right, for sure.
So,
Yeah, and it's one of those things too, it's like, I mentioned, like, I'm gonna give them all the tools and everything to chase their dreams, and it's not like, at the same time, it's not I'm gonna, like, be like a spoon-fed kid, like, give them a spoiled kid, like, obviously, I'm gonna spoil my kids, but not in a way it's like, hand them everything, they gotta work for it, and, a lot of people, I think, looked at my life growing up as, like, I was handed everything and, "Oh, he's got rich parents and gets what he wants," but, um, we grew up I grew up off the start, with my parents worked their butts off and, struggled off the start, and they ended up building a super successful business. I got to watch them, as a kid growing up, start down here and build, 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 build together, and, I watched that and, I was always told myself, like, if I could be half as good as my parents, I'd fucking that's amazing, So, like, I want my kids to feel the same way, like, look at my dad and, like, if I can be half as what my dad is, sweet, and, like, my parents, they want me to be 100 times better than what they are, and I want the same thing for my kids, and, growing up, I had tough love for my dad, I feel like, and in the moment as a kid, there's a lot of times I'm like, "Gosh, I freaking hate you," like, "You'd be such a prick," and whatnot, but, like, looking back, dude, I'm so thankful for every single one of those moments where I'm like, "God, I hate you," in the moment, but, like, looking back on it, like, dude, that is what, like, made me who I am today, so, like, I always told myself, like, growing up, there's, like, times, like, I would take from, like, "Oh, I'm gonna be like that when I become a parent one day," but, like, you know what, like, maybe I won't do it in, like, certain ways like that, but, like, my kids are definitely get some tough love here and there, and, like, 'cause, even me, like, still today, I watch a lot of Andrew Tate and David Goggins and stuff like that, and, like, you gotta I wanna raise some pussies, like, I want my kids to be men, like, and, good dudes too, like, be respectful, have good morals, and, have thick skin because that's what you gotta have in today's world, thick skin is what you need, so, because a lot of people don't have it anymore.
yeah. What are some things you think people get wrong about extreme sports athletes?
Shoot, um, it really depends on I think, depending on what, type of extreme sport, because everyone kinda has, like, their things, like, freestyle, a lot of people get, like, see him as, like, the metal militia mentality of, like, bunch of just jackasses that party, disrespectful, whatever. Um, like, the skater, BMX world is, like, a lot of people see him as, like, more, like, doing drugs and like, different, like, like, more, um kind of reckless, I feel like, and, every sport has, like, its thing, like, stereotype almost, I feel like, and, at the end of the day, like, every sport I'm talking for, like, 90% of people, I'd say, because obviously there's bad eggs in every sport and whatnot, but, um, like, for example, it's like my first year riding freestyle, like, I was a newbie, I know my tricks weren't that great, and I wasn't the best rider or anything like that, but I was out there doing my best, and I was with Adam Jones, who's, like, one of the best in the industry, and he's just a normal dude, like, um, everyone, that does this type of stuff, at the end of the day, they're normal people, like, just you, me, Joe Blow down the road, like, they're normal dudes, they're dealing with all the same stuff, and, yeah, so I think a lot of people just, like, s hold on to the stereotypes and kinda think people are, might think they're assholes or think they're above one another, but, from their shoes, and most of them don't think that way, I feel like, at least I don't, so
No, it's definitely, that's something that I have kind of noticed since I've, gotten into this, and like especially this weekend in Tacoma, you know, like for example, like Jimmy Hill didn't know
Yep.
he was supposed to be there, and he comes walking in when me and you were filming some stuff,
Yep.
and he's like, "Hey man, I'm Jimmy." I'm like, "Yeah, no shit, you're
Right,
Jimmy." I'm like, "I know exactly who you are." And
right,
like,
freaking legend.
but like the thing is like, he's a legend or whatever, but like he is just a normal guy. He's definitely funnier than the average person, but like he's just a normal dude. Like you get to
Yeah,
know that, and like, me and him, like we woke up, what was it, Sunday morning early, and we ended up eating breakfast at the hotel restaurant, and like we're both just sitting there eating fucking scrambled eggs, talking about how we both have peanut allergies. Like
right.
it's just a normal
Right,
guy,
right.
right?
No,
It's
exactly.
kind of, it's but like you said, it's good to have idols and everything, but you know, they're a normal person just like you, and you can do the things that they do too if you really
100%.
want to.
Yep.
So, what was your journey into FMX like? How did you get started?
Yeah, so it's kinda crazy, I've always I wouldn't say always I never wanted to do freestyle, but kinda where it started, I think I was, like, 8 years old at the time or maybe 10 years old, somewhere around there. I went out to this dirt bike track called Toes MX, which was, like, in, Royal City, Washington, which is, like, central Washington. They had one of the best facilities on it, not facilities, but tracks in Washington, in my opinion, because they had Supercross track, like, basically like an amateur Supercross track, a big outdoor track. They had the peakiest jumps you've ever seen, like, every jump out there was like a freestyle jump essentially, and it was sick. I loved it. Everything was big. That's where Ryan Capes did his or was originally practicing for his world record jump. My buddy Alex Harville, that passed away a few years ago, I met him out there, and, that's where he broke the ramp to dirt world record with the longest dirt bike jump, of 425 feet. Um and he had a bunch of freestyle ramps out there, super kickers, comp ramps, and whatnot. And that's where I hit my first freestyle ramp for the first time, and freaking loved it. Not that I was ever planning to do tricks or anything like that. I mean, shoot, out there I was doing like messing around doing no footers and taking a hand off the bar and stuff like that, but like never even thought of getting into the freestyle world at that time. Um, but being so young and stuff, at that time, Steve ended up, once his property got shut down over there later, she was probably like 16, 17, 18 at the time. I ended up acquiring all of his freestyle ramps. And so uh, those ended up sitting at my parents' place for shoot 4 or 5 years, not being used. I always wanted to build a landing and set him up. My mom was like, heck no, that's never going to happen. um, but you know, later on, I, ended up moving out of the house and stuff and moving east. I had a buddy open up a dirt bike track over there. And so I ended up setting up one ramp over there and building a dirt landing. Um, and at that point, I was like, that's when I started getting back and I quit racing and, hadn't been racing for or riding bikes for like 4 years. And I just got a bike again. So started riding dirt bike tracks again and then set up a ramp over there, started throwing some whips off the ramp. And then, you know, that was that for a while. That ended up getting shut down because of a couple people hitting the ramp and getting hurt, and, having ramps at a public dirt bike track isn't a easy task because there's no way to keep people off them. and they are dangerous in the day, especially jumping into the straight dirt. And so that kind of got shut down. Um, and then COVID happened, and I ended up moving into the place that I'm at now, and ended up building a dirt landing and set up a freestyle ramp, and was like, I'm gonna start freaking jumping ramps. And basically just I wanted to like shoot more film content and stuff for social media. I was like big, like wanting to like, I grew up racing with Axel Hodges, and he was kind of like one of my bigger competitors at the time. And seeing what he was doing on social media was kind of like the beginning of his, um, taking off in the whole social media thing. He was the only one posting all these like free riding clips, starting doing freestyle ramps, all the wheelie stuff, and basically it started on Snapchat and stuff. And so like that's kind of want to start doing that same stuff. 'Cause I thought it was cool, and so we pushed this dirt landing up, and I was waiting for more dirt. I was gonna wait for more dirt because the landing was somewhat tall enough, but at the top is like 6 foot wide when it should be like 20 feet wide. And instead of waiting 2 more days for more dirt to get delivered, I decided to just send it. And so I can send you the video of that too. I ended up sending it, and first jump, if the landing was just a foot wider, I would have been fine. But ended up landing back tire just right off the side, kind of cased a little bit. But if there was like a little bit wider landing, would have rode out of it. Ended up wrecking, break my shoulder, a couple ribs, stuff like that. Um, so I ended up was out for like 4 weeks. Came back and ended up dialing it in. The landing was bigger. Posted a few videos, throwing whips and stuff. And my buddy Jared LaRue, who was actually riding in Tacoma with us this weekend, uh, he started, I posted a few videos, and he started kind of talking crap as a buddy, like, oh, jump off your bike, pussy, do a trick, yada, yada, yada. And, this is when COVID starts. So no one's really doing anything besides just hanging out at home. And so I was riding bikes every day. And so I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm gonna start like learning stuff. So at home, I started like throwing like knacks and like little things like that. And he talked me into like driving down to Arizona. And so I freaking loaded up bikes, my dog and everything. Didn't have kids at the time, and drove down to Arizona. Um, Spent 2.5 weeks down there, and he ended up teaching me how to do seat grabs and a couple little things like that. Had a couple crashes while I was down there. But yeah, and that's where it basically started. And he was friends with Robert Haslam up here and did a bunch of shows with him and whatnot. And so he basically connected me with Haslam because I'd been trying to ride with Haslam for years, and he was like not about having people over unless they're friends and kind of whatnot. So it kind of took me going down to um, Arizona around Jared to be like, Jared messaged Robert and was like, hey, you should hit up Cody and he'd be good for you to ride with, because Robert wouldn't really ride much at home because there's no one in Washington State that rides freestyle. It was just Robert. And I get it too. Like, you don't want random people coming up to your house either, because it's like the liability is huge if these days everyone's too happy and whatnot. So like I totally understand that. But took Jared kind of vouching for me to be able to start riding with him. So then I had a buddy up here to shoot. I was getting off work and going over to his place almost every day of the week riding, and we were just hammering out session after session. Um, and then one day, Robert got a call to do a show over in Coeur d'Alene, at a fair for like a monster truck show. And it was like a super last minute thing. It was like on a Wednesday or Thursday. And I only had like 3 or 4 tricks at this time, seat grab, heart attack, seat grab, indie, knack, and some whips. Like I had like no tricks. um, but Robert got called to do the show, and he's bringing his ramp and airbag there. And they didn't have an upright guy. So he's like, oh, I got this kid Cody that just started riding. So Robert brought me along to that. And that was my first show. That I did. And I was super pumped. It was the coolest thing ever. Sketchy because we had some wind and some rain coming in and stuff. So it was like kind of a sketchy one. Robert had been doing it for however many years, and he was even nervous to do it. So that made it even extra scary for me for my first show. But it was good. We made it through it. And from there, the opportunity from Jared get me into like Monster Jam and stuff. A few months after that, I did my first Monster Jam show, and it's just snowballed effect from there.
What advice would you give to somebody that wants to maybe get into freestyle motocross?
uh, Honestly, a lot of people would say right now the sport's kind of dying, but right now there's, I'd say, a shortage of riders. Like So, like, now would be the time. Honestly, if you wanna do it, we need riders.
Yeah.
But no, if you seriously wanna get into it, it's like one of those things, it's like, you gotta start small, like, obviously, I grew up racing for years and years and years, so it wasn't like I just went and bought a dirt bike and started doing freestyle too, so you gotta take that into perspective, but, um, it's one of those things, like, if you build bike skill outside of riding freestyle, all that stuff transfers, um, to freestyle, I'd say. So it's like the biggest thing starting small, finding someone, like a lot of us are all, I feel like, super cool people at the end of the day and are super helpful. Like that's one thing I've learned from a lot of these guys I ride with. I was riding with Javier, who's with riding Nitro Circus. He just got done doing the Nitro Circus tour this whole last year. And uh, that dude's been so helpful with learning tricks. I'm starting to learn flip tricks and stuff. And he's like, oh, do this, do that. And it's like, dude, my progression just this weekend alone doing no-handed backflips, like shout out to Javier, because that was like the few things he told me. I was like, all right. I'm like, I've always been told by like my trainers growing up, like I'm a sponge and take things and put it to use. And the stuff he taught me or told me, like flat out worked. And like no different to me. Like if someone wants to get into freestyle, like if they had questions like about, distance or whatever, it's like ask someone, like, um, and I made that mistake, when I first set my ramp, everyone's like, oh, 75 feet, 75 feet. Well, yeah, 75 feet's to, like, the knuckle, 75 feet's not to the back of the landing, So, like, when I first set up my setup, like, I was 75-foot gap, probably 85, 90 feet to where you're
Oh
supposed to
shit.
land, So, like, little things like that, you can definitely there's an easier way to learn things than I learned a lot of things the hard way, just, like, kinda doing it on my own and, ask someone, like, the worst thing someone can say is or someone leave you on red or say no or whatever, big whoop, like, um, there's easier ways to learn things. Like a lot of it's just asking someone and having a mentor. So, reach out to someone, take it slow, and you know, don't don't set like limits on things because it's crazy. Like I never thought I'd be doing backflips. I never thought I'd be riding Monster Jam shows. Never thought I'd be doing a lot of this, and a lot of things can snowball effect in a good way. So don't put limits or caps. Sky's the limit on anything. So.
Yeah, for sure. What's next for Cody McDonough?
Shoot, what's next? I have big goals. Shoot, I don't ever really share goals honestly with a lot of people. That's something I keep to myself, and
Same.
uh, that's something I keep within and build and work towards every day. I do a lot of self reflection on all that. This I just came out of the season. And, December is my month of where I reflect and plan for the year upcoming. And I have big goals this year, just like every year, and it's crazy every December to look back and like look how much things can evolve and what you can accomplish. I'd say 2024 it was like the opposite. December was like, holy crap, like maybe I set way too big of goals and like maybe I should go back a little bit. But I kind of going into 25 it was like, all right, we're gonna reset. We're trying to hit these goals. Some goals I hit, and so those like evolved into something bigger. But some goals I didn't even get close or even like I was like, "Damn." Like so I was like, "All right," but those ones I didn't even get close or didn't even seem like I tried, it felt like. I was like, "All right, those ones here, this is we're making a plan to how we're gonna get there." And like this year reflecting, it's like, dang, like looking at my goals, on my lock screen on my phone too, like every year I usually, you can have like 3 or 4 different lock screens. I have kind of depends on what I'm doing, like I'll have a freestyle picture, a sled picture, picture of my kids, which is like mostly on there. But a lot of times at night, I'll go to bed, I'll throw my lock screen and my goals on there. And so like the first thing I look at when I turn off my alarm in the morning, boom, it's my goals for the year. And it's crazy, looking at those all year long. And then December, you actually look at them, it's like and reflect, it's like, whoa, I hit a lot of those, or even not even all of it, but like, made big steps at all of them. And so it's like, this year it's like, um, I feel like I'm in a progression era and it's just like, there's so many things I just want to like take the drive and the progression that's like rolling right now and just carry it and see what can happen. Um, there's not like anything like big or specific in mind, but it's basically just chasing the progression. We'll have that fire lit right now. So, because I do have a fire lit, like, back when I was a kid racing, like wanting to be the best, so like, um, really for this year, it's like me versus me, just trying to be the best I can be, so, and see where that takes me and what opportunities it opens up.
Fuck yeah, dude. That lock screen deal's not a bad idea. I might
Yeah.
try that and force yourself to like read it.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
don't
No, like,
just like, because then it just becomes your background at that point.
yeah. And so like, let's see here. It's like, I guess you probably can't see from there, but this is what my lock screen was today. Scroll over a couple kids. Boom, here's my what am I going to do? Obviously, this is my 2025 here, so right now I haven't fully got my 26 one done here yet, but it's like my goals are like, what am I going to do in 2025? And boom, I have everything listed here. From being a great get dad to my kids every day, to big financial goals, to big riding goals, to big sponsorship goals. Simple stuff like just good health and stuff like that. Like a lot of my stuff is like, all across the board, from family, business, financial, writing, all of it, So I really take all that shit serious.
Yeah, I do too. I'm always like, people kind of roll their eyes when you tell them when you do something like that. But it ain't no bullshit, man. It works. Like
Hmm.
if you there are little hacks that you can do and the shit fucking works if you care.
Right.
If you don't care, it's not going to work. If you care, it will because I have spent the last like because the last definitely the last like 6 years of my life have been just goal heavy as shit.
Yep.
And I've tried a lot of different things like that.
Yep.
I don't do all the same ones that I started out doing, but like where I am now versus where I was 6 years ago
Yep.
is night and day difference.
Yep.
If you would have showed me a recap of this weekend 6 years ago, I'd have been like, "You're smoking crack."
Right.
That didn't
Straight up.
happen. Like
Straight
it's
up.
not happening,
Yep.
but it does if you keep after it.
Yep.
So yeah. Well, hell yeah, man. This was a fun fucking weekend, dude. This was probably one of the coolest weekends of my life. I can't lie. Like this has been a blast.
Yeah. Heck yeah. Same here. Like, dude, this is, I'm stoked to be doing this podcast with you. Like, I've always wanted to do more stuff like this. I told you, and it's crazy. Like, I mean, looking back, like we just met in Thanksgiving weekend in Omaha, Nebraska for a Monster Jam show. And, back to freaking dirt bikes, man. It's crazy the people you meet and the places you go. Like the fact that I was in Omaha, Nebraska, middle of the freaking United States. And, now we're here and like now I consider you a friend of mine. And, like, dude, like when I don't know, like nowadays, like when I ride, like riding's sick and all, but like in Nebraska when I met you, like, um, you're there filming and whatnot, and once I seen you pump out the first edit you made for us, like it was like the group edit you did of, shoot, who was it that weekend? It was me, Dean, Jared, and I think Scrub,
Scrub, yeah.
and, like, dude, we had so much fun that weekend, and then, like, you captured, like, all these fucking dope ass shots, and, like, I'm like, "Holy shit, dude, like, that's me right there." Like, you made me look I feel like I look so freaking sick, and, like, also for me, it's, like, not even the riding anymore like that I enjoy, it's, like, to be able to look back, like, all the riding portion goes by so fast, especially, like, the Monster Jam stuff, it's like, dude, we get 10 minutes out there, and we're riding for probably 3 of those minutes, and, like, so it's, like, blink of an eye, and it's, like it's cool in the moment, but, like, it's almost more enjoyable to, like, watch that stuff back, and then, like, especially, like, when you throw, like, the cinematic into that, like, the talent you have is freaking insane, like, I was freaking blown away, and so, like, I was like, "Dude, we gotta," like, I told you from that, like, "We gotta connect and do more," like, I wanna do more, and, like, one thing I wanna do is, like, I wanna put me out there too more and put my face in front of the camera, not just my riding, like, I wanna, hopefully connect with more people because, like, I'm a normal guy, and, you know, I I'm kind of a living example, I think, of, like, what you can do is, like, I never thought I'd be riding freestyle motocross, let alone doing backflips or even freaking doing a podcast, like,
Mhm.
like, not that I'm anyone special, but it's like, I never thought I'd be where I'm at right now, and, you know, hopefully someone else can see and connect with what I've said, and, hopefully I can change their life and they take that jump of faith and face fear head on, and, I'm excited to freaking continue to grow and build, and I'm excited for this relationship to grow with you and, all the cool and exciting things we're gonna do in the future, um, because 'cause you're
Yeah.
freaking talented, and I think we put our 2 things together, and I think we're gonna do some pretty dope shit.
Yeah, absolutely. And dude, it's super exciting because, like we talked about earlier, saying yes to things and if you get an opportunity to jump on it, because
Yep.
like I was didn't really have like filming at Monster Jam in Omaha planned. I just happened to be at
Right.
Scrubs like a couple weeks before, and he's like, "You want to come up and film or whatever?" I'm like, "Fuck yeah, might as well. It sounds
Right.
fun or whatever." And
Yep.
then, that kind of led to one thing, which led to another, which not even a month later, here we are, and
Right.
had a just amazing fucking weekend, and it was a blast. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm freaking so thankful, dude. It's been a fucking killer weekend, and, yeah, we're just getting started, so cheers.
Shit, yeah. Cody McDonough, FMX superstar. Thank you.